My name is Greg Pitstick. I am a managing director at Huron Consulting. I've been working on helping companies improve their supply chains globally for the last 35 years. And I've been talking to a lot of CFOs and VP of Ops recently about how they make their supply chain more resilient. And specifically, in the last 4 or 5 months, we've been talking about how to prepare their organization for potential tariffs that are coming. We're working with clients day to day on questions about what should I do first? How do I handle the financial impact? What is going to be the change of demand shifting from Asia to the United States or Mexico? And today I have with me Alex Bowen, who is also helping clients. Alex, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I am Alex Bowen. I'm a consulting manager at Huron Consulting. I work at the intersection of data science and supply chain to really help customers optimize their supply chains. And Greg, I thought today we'd start with, how do you think about the tariff impact and the greater idea of supply chain resilience?
You know, it's interesting, when we talk to clients, the tariff impact is really just one more Lego block that is going into the disruptions of supply chains. You can go all the way back to the pandemic. We can go to the key bridge that fell in Baltimore. We can go to strikes at docks. This is just one more piece that is happening to supply chains. No longer can we create a long extended global supply chain that's rigid. Things happen dynamically that we have to be prepared for. And the tariff part is an unknown that's coming that organizations have to be ready to handle as they move forward, but it's also the same activities that will prepare them for changes in other areas, other black swans that they're unprepared for.
I think that's right, because what I'm seeing with my clients is there's more volatility than ever, right? And there's this temptation to set it and forget it, right? The way we've always done it is the way we continue to do it. And I think that's the danger, that's the risk. So when you're thinking about this with leaders, where do you recommend them to start? Like, what should they be thinking about today that they're not thinking about?
You know, the first part is to have visibility into the problem set. Yeah. So most organizations, or many organizations, really don't have good handle on their data and easy visibility. So if someone said, this particular byway is now collapsed, would you have any clue quickly as to what of your parts actually go through that particular byway? You know, for tariffs in China or in other locations or in Mexico, do you know right now your products, what you pay in the country of origin, handy so that you can wake up in the morning and quickly do an analysis so you can start putting in place contingency plans? So the number one first thing for an organization is to have a good handle on their data.
I think that makes total sense. And I think when you think about the bigger supply chain, it's multi-layered. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what are the downstream impacts? Right, we know the upstream impacts, we know the disruptions, we know the logistical, we know the natural disasters. What are the downstream impacts that are hitting businesses today?
You know, it's not just hitting businesses today, what could hit businesses, in that whenever you see shifts in global demand where things are moving from one region to another, capacity is not built overnight. So many of our clients have experienced capacity issues on key parts domestically, where capacity shifted from Mexico, Canada, China to North America, to the United States, and it sucked up the extra capacity at their manufacturers, at their suppliers that they weren't expecting. And they didn't have the good supplier collaboration in place to give them their forecast, and suddenly we're out of parts. Yeah. And my supplier can't handle the demand. Well, I was in sourcing internationally, didn't matter. Shifting demand is gonna cause disruptions to supply chains, even for companies that source domestically.
Let's say you're a CFO, you're a VP, whatever the case may be, and you know this is a problem. You're aware of all the disruptions, but you don't even know where to start. Where would you recommend? What are the baby steps that can help a company start to build resilience today?
We first mentioned data. Now, once you get a good handle of your data and where your parts are coming from, the next thing is to really take an accurate assessment of your supply chain capabilities from the point that you do your demand forecasting through SIOP, through your production planning, your material planning, all the way through your shipping, and look at, are you really integrated using best practices? Here's a hint. If you're using Excel all over the place, that is not going to be a resilient supply chain where a shock can come in and you can very quickly reorganize. And there's some downstream impacts from this too. Your supply chain, you may think, okay, I got it resilient, but then a shock comes in place. Do you have the further parts in place? So for example, available to promise. I have a particular angle bracket that I'm out of capacity for. I can't get, I'm on limited supply, so I'm going to have to be able to give new order dates to customers. Some customers are going to be on allocations, others are going to need new available to promise capability to say, when am I going to get it based upon that new part coming in? A lot of companies haven't thought this through of how they're going to promise to their customers, how they're going to execute manufacturing, how they have clear to build. So based upon the parts coming in. So the next step after data is to really understand where all of your supply chain capabilities are so you can figure out, what do I do first, second, and third.
Yep. Where are my gaps and how do I put them in priority list? And you hit on it, but I think data is the most important piece here, or the starting piece here.
Well, of course, you're a data scientist. You're going to
Of
always
course,
have
yes.
data.
Of course,
but data is the most important
Data is the
part.
foundation, right?
Yes,
And you said it, and I think the key here is that your data needs to be integrated into a ecosystem or a central nervous system that is available and visible to the entire organization. So talk to me a little bit more about how you think about that. How do we get all of the data so that it's speaking the same language and it's in one place?
It's interesting. The way I communicate it to executives who don't understand data, because that sounds weird, like data governance and my data, and it sounds like an IT thing someone else needs to handle. Data to your supply chain systems and ERP overall is very similar to cash to an organization. You have to have cash to run your business. You can't pay your employees, keep the lights on, and do things without cash. Now it's interesting from a cash standpoint, because everyone can touch that. We've put in place protective ways to monitor it, to forecast it, treasury aspects. So cash is a very, very important part of the CFO's organization. Who owns your data? And specifically, who owns the supply chain data, and who is treating it with the same level of respect that you're treating your cash? And in most organizations, they can't point to anyone or they point to IT. Yeah. IT may be the steward behind the scenes of your data. They do not own it. Your organization itself has to own the data, and that's a cultural shift for many organizations.
Or they point to each other, and there's a lot of this happening. And what's interesting is, to me, good data is like a flywheel, meaning a lot of our clients are coming to us and they're saying, what can we do with AI, right? What can we do with machine learning? And good data drives better decision making, which means you can do some of this cool new modeling. Oh, and by the way, once you have those capabilities, you can make a more resilient supply chain, right? You can have predictive things. You can see the bigger ecosystems. How does weather affect my logistics? And so one of the cool things I think about is getting your data right for a resilient supply chain also just reinforces your business overall. It just makes you a better business, and it future-proofs you as things continue to change.
And data is a byproduct of people doing a process.
That's right.
So if you have healthy data, what it really says is you have proper ownership of processes that are integrated and the people are doing their jobs. Data does not happen in of itself. Yep. It's a byproduct. So what it really says is if you have bad data, it means that you have poor processes and lack of people ownership or capabilities. Right. And you have to attack the people and the process ownership in the business to result in the good data. Yeah. And you're absolutely correct, it's a flywheel, because once I get the good people, process, and data working together, I can then get it better and better and better and improve on the maturity curve. And the hardest thing with inertia is to go from I'm really bad to getting even okay.
First push.
That first push, it is a giant first step. But with tariffs coming and the shifts that I think are going to happen over the next several years in global supply chains, people really got to put an emphasis on their data and specifically on the people and the processes across their supply chain. Otherwise, we're going to be caught flat-footed. Yep. and it's going to impact our financials and our ability to meet our customers' demand.
Yep. What's your one key takeaway that you would tell a CFO or a VP? What is your one thing that you would tell them today?
What I'm telling organizations when I talk to them is who's in charge? This is very multifaceted, has lots of issues to it. Who in the executive suite, you can't delegate this down way in the organization because it's going to cross all the functional silos. It's going to cross your sales, your purchasing, your procurement, your sourcing, your product development, your engineering, your manufacturing, your inventory, your logistics. It's going to cross all of those. Who in the organization is going to look at your response and be the captain of the ship, have their hands on the wheel, so when the headwinds come or the winds come from a different direction, waves come that you were not expecting, can take the organization, help guide it, and coordinate all those people. Most organizations, there's no one person.
Right.
So what they really need to be doing from this point forward is to put a quarterback in place, has to be at the executive level, and then cascading responsibilities, because we've got to tear down the silos in the organization. So we're working together to be flexible, because one thing is guaranteed: we do not know what the impacts are going to be, and they're not what we're going to expect.
And how can we help?
At Huron, we developed a good playbook for that quarterback that lays out in just simple 4 pages, here are the steps of what you do first, second, and third. So that playbook can help any organization perform and have a starting point for building their resilient supply chain. And it's not something that's going to be done overnight. This is a multi-year activity.
Yep, it's a starting point, right?
It's a starting
playbook to help you understand the nuts and bolts and what should you be thinking about.